to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all so much for sticking with me as I continue to detail the journey from a father's side, from a mother's side, as well as my daughter's. Our daughter, JC, was diagnosed with a rare form of brain cancer in 2020. Throughout the last year, I've had a really great honor of being able to interview other families, warriors, as doctors, nurses, as well as authors, and how their life has been affected by pediatric cancer. So it's really exciting for me to be able to share those stories and show how pediatric cancer can have a positive effect on the world if we truly understand it. So today, I have the honor of speaking to Maggie Bushway, who is the author of the book Pearls, which I have right here.
You have the book?
You have the book right here. I want to speak a little bit more about this. It's called A Memoir on Childhood Brain Cancer and Hope, and it is written by yourself as well as your father. And there's a lot of information in here, and it's written in a way that is really easily understandable and easy to follow, which is great for people like me who, if I don't get into it right in the beginning of the book, I'm putting it down and it's going to sit in the corner. So Maggie, thank you so much for being with me today. And if you want to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you. My name's Maggie Bushway. I'm an author, independent filmmaker. I kind of dabble in all things creative and media, but my life has been impacted a lot by pediatric brain cancer. So my eventual goal has always been to tell my story. So I'm glad that I finally got to do that.
Love the best thing, like I said in the very beginning, the best is what I've seen is people take this experience and turn it into something positive. And whether it's, becoming a doctor or a nurse or an author, and being able to tell your story in a way that is going to impact so many people in a positive way, it truly is inspiring. So I'm glad that you were able to take everything that you went through and turn it into something that will be so positive for other people.
Thank you.
I want to ask you you mentioned that you had wanted to write it for a long time and you finally put it all together. And I love the way that it's in here, and I'll read an excerpt from it in a little while, but I want you to tell me kind of what the inspiration for you was to actually write a book.
When I was 8, my goal was I was writing a book while I was in chemo, and I thought it was like a really big book. It turned out to be, just a little bit here and there, but I always wanted to write a book. And when I found all my dad's manuscripts, like his blog posts and my writing from when I was in chemo, I knew I had to do something creative with it. I couldn't figure out whether to do a movie, a series of short films, or a book. And then I realized that when I started this whole thing, that was my dream, was to publish a book. My sisters would play mom or play house. I would play author. I was always pretending to be a writer. So I wanted to give this to my younger self so that, I could fulfill her dream.
I think that in itself is truly inspiring, because I think we can all look back at our younger self and say, you should have made this choice, or maybe you should have made that choice, but have a passion that young and then continue that passion later on in life. A lot of us change what direction we go in life as we're growing up, and you stuck with it, which is incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I wanted to, this is where I want, and it's in the very beginning. And this is an excerpt that I was reading as I was sitting here kind of skimming, and I was looking at it and saying, it makes so much sense, because I say this all the time. Like, cancer is an absolute family diagnosis, right? It's not,
Yes.
the patient is obviously the most important, but it's a family. And what you said is, you said it a lot more beautiful and eloquently than I did, was that it was a journey that your entire family walked together and nobody had the full picture. One of us has a piece of the puzzle, and the process of writing the book was putting all the puzzle pieces together. I love that, because throughout this entire journey, I know that there's things that my wife has seen and that I have seen and my other daughters have seen that are all different in different aspects, which is kind of why I called this podcast The Childhood Cancer Perspective, because you see it from a different view and everybody sees it like that. So the fact that you have that, you took all those pieces and put them together to create this, is that much more incredible, because now it's really the family, right? The family creating that book, that passion to move forward, which I love.
Thank you. It was really eye-opening to get my siblings' perspective on everything because my younger sisters were toddlers at the time. My older brother was 9, so he understood a little bit more. But my sisters grew up in a world where cancer was normal. And, there were scary times for them, but there was also a sense of this is just how life is. And so it was really eye-opening to hear how they saw things.
So tell me more about not only the impact that this diagnosis had on your siblings, but tell me the impact that they had on your journey through it and your recovery.
So I would be in and out the hospital my whole childhood. And a lot of times, in the hospital, you want to leave, you want to get to a point where you're not sick so you can leave. But all I had in my focus was I want to go home to my siblings. I miss my siblings. I want to be with them. I didn't realize that was my entire desire until I started reading, my old writing. Almost every time I would write something, it would be, I miss my siblings. I want to be with Dax and Catherine and Zoe. And I didn't realize that, it had that much of an impact on me.
I think that you're mirroring a lot of what, I mean, not only our own personal experiences are, but what we've heard so much of in this community is that while there are so many things that can make you better or give you inspiration or give you, the will to kind of fight through everything, the impact the siblings have on that, I think is really overlooked a lot. I don't think they really give a lot of credit to what just being there as a sibling, because, in life, friends are going to come and go, right? And that's just part of it. But your siblings are always going to be there for you no matter what, and they're going to love you unconditionally. But they truly have a way with just making you feel better. I've said that my daughter, when she was in the hospital, she would call our now 16-year-old on FaceTime, and they wouldn't say anything. It would just be an open line, and it was just that connection that they had that mom and dad couldn't give to her, and would make them feel that much better. So glad that you had that experience too.
Me too. My brother, Dax, he learned how to take care of me when I was in chemo, and eventually they sent fluids home with us. So I wouldn't have to be in the hospital the entire time I was also in chemo. So Dax learned how to flush my port. And I remember just, putting all my trust in him and thinking he knows exactly what he's doing. And now he's a doctor. And that experience of taking care of me kind of shaped him into who he is now.
That I love to hear. And that honestly, I wish that more and more did that, but I'm hearing that a lot more, honestly. I really am, that people are taking this experience and turning it into something, and even direct sibling, but indirect, because it didn't affect you with, the cancer specifically, but he took that and turned it into a future. I think that's amazing. So glad to hear that. That's incredible. Well, so we started out talking about the book and siblings and things like that. So what exactly was the type of cancer that you were diagnosed with?
I was diagnosed with a grade 2 astrocytoma in my right insular cortex. That's an adult brain tumor that was in a 7-year-old brain. Most children have tumors kind of in the back of their head. Mine was almost in the middle, and it was very hard to diagnose because no one was looking for it. And when someone did catch it, then it was just automatically dismissed as, well, that has to be a cyst because that doesn't happen to children. So it was very hard in the beginning to, one, get it diagnosed, and two, actually get treatment for it, get a surgery. It was a very hard process, especially for my parents, because they knew that something was wrong with me, but they had a hard time getting doctors to actually pursue it and understand that, yes, it's an adult brain tumor, but it is in her brain.
Is another thing. With the diagnosis of brain cancer in general, it's one of the most underfunded and misunderstood types of cancer in children, and it's very hard. It's very hard to diagnose if you're not looking for it, and that's we notice the same thing. And it's a lot of misdiagnosis. It's a lot of time and waiting and waiting and waiting and not really understanding what's going on. So how long did it take for you to have the diagnosis, and were there a lot or any diagnosis along the way?
It took my parents about a year of like them actually knowing that there was something wrong, but they suspect that the tumor was growing for years before that. But what my parents saw was I was a very smart kid, learned how to read when I was 4. My parents homeschooled us, so I would just kind of sit and listen to Dax's lessons and, learn at the pace he was going. So when when my tumor started showing symptoms, I just started unlearning things. And I couldn't keep up with Dax. I couldn't even keep up with the pace that I should be going at that age. So along the way, people thought, maybe I had ADHD, or for a while, like I would have these like terror attacks because of the location of the tumor. Like it was right by the amygdala, and it caused me to just have these irrational fears. So, I was sent to a psychologist, all these like little things here and there that people would try to simplify. I'm like, it's just this common thing, and not look into what else could it be.
Sounds so painfully familiar to really kind of look at well, number one, it's the parents, and the parents know that there's something wrong, right? Your parents, if they can tell when their child is off, when they're not at their norm, that their baselines are weird. And when a doctor is telling you, or multiple, something over and over again, is either this is what's wrong or this is what's wrong, and they don't really kind of listen to what it could be, can be frustrating. And it in all that time lost along with until that diagnosis comes, to where you may have had a different outcome had they did diagnose it earlier. Does seem to be a common theme within this community as well, is that for instance, our daughter was diagnosed with constipation for months and months and months. When we knew something, my wife knew something was wrong. Finally get a quick 10-minute CT scan to say she has a mass inside of her brain, and we're wondering, kind of going back and saying, why couldn't we find this earlier? That really seems to be a common problem. And I hate the fact that anybody has to go through that, and that it's not more accepted to just kind of listen to what parents are saying if we know something's wrong.
I think it can go undiagnosed for a while, especially in children, because it does change, their personality sometimes. At that young age, your personality is just developing. So it can be hard to tell, like, that's not them, unless, you are living with them every day.
Absolutely. And it's just that is part of, I think, one of the biggest things that is an issue with me, I think, is that you have parents that are trying so hard to get these diagnoses happen. And I've really yet to come across a lot, if any, that say that, we went in and we had a diagnosis within even less than months. It's always seems to be, it's a dragging out of this. We know something's wrong. So it really is unfortunate. I mean, I am absolutely 100% grateful. Like I say, we are not, as our family, we are not one of the success stories. Our daughter passed away and we weren't able to save her, but I am so happy to have, to be speaking to you and other survivors that are success stories, because that means that there's hope. That means that there's a chance that we're going to be able to find a way to make a difference. And
Yes.
not only with just talking and sharing our stories, but things like this, because this is important. This is important because it means that you have this chance now. This book means that you made it through all of this, and you were able to tell your story and give other people inspiration. So that is incredible and important. And I'm so glad to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you. One of the main things I wanted to get across in the book is that, kids may have a prognosis starting out that, you're never going to get to this point. I was told probably wouldn't graduate high school, probably wouldn't make it to high school, wouldn't go to college, all these things, because I have seizures as a result of having had brain cancer, and the seizures cause a lot of damage So I've been told that there's all these things I couldn't do, and I wanted to beat the odds, so I just keep pushing and pushing. And so I just want people to know that, doctors may say this is what you can or can't do, but if it's something you want to do, I would do it.
It's wonderful advice. It really is, because, in the end, especially when you're dealing with cancer, it really is, it starts on a board. There's no book that's going to tell you this is exactly how long you're going to make it or not make it, how much you're going to succeed in, what you're going to be able to do. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. So it's wonderful advice. It really is. If there's something that you want to do, you don't let any of this stuff define what you're going through. Don't let it stop you from doing things, and just continue to, to fight through no matter what. I wanted to ask you then about, you mentioned seizures, as well as we were talking a little bit before the episode, during the treatments that you were going through, and now what type of side effects did you experience, and are you still experiencing because of the treatments that you went through?
When I had gamma knife radiation, that's what ultimately killed the tumor. I went through a tumor section that they were able to get all of it, and chemo didn't work. So gamma knife radiation was pretty new. And we were told that the surgeon thought that this would cure my seizures, but not kill the tumor. And it wound up doing the opposite. It killed the tumor, but it made my seizures a whole lot worse. So the scar damage, especially, is what made it worse. And the tumor is still in there. It's just dead. And so it, also causes seizures in the area that it's in.
That was, I've never, the side effects that go through that you don't read about, and I say this as well, is that often when they bring in consent forms to tell you what they're going to do and to have your parents sign, about 1 page of telling you where to sign and about 30 pages of what the side effects could be just from the treatments that you're going to get. And a lot of times they develop later on and kind of out of nowhere. Our daughter ended up having focal seizures in the end that just kind of developed out of absolutely nowhere, no rhyme or reason for it, just happened. Developed palsy, and all these cognitive delays, and then she lost her ability to speak. There's all these different things that happen along the lines that I don't think people really kind of look into and see that the treatments that are going forward with cancer patients in general, but especially with kids, so harsh, and they're doing their job, right? They're killing the cancer, they're killing the cells, but they're killing everything. They're like bulldozers running through a china shop, and it often does so much damage that the side effects can often be worse than what the chemo or the cancer, the symptoms that you had in the first place. And so it's about, we have to find a way to do something better, because it's just not okay. And you should be able to live your life and not worry about every single day what's going to happen, or, schedule your life around things that the body has gone through because of these types of treatments.
In my chapter about chemo, when I was writing it, I realized that when I was going through it, I was so young that I was ignorant to how hard it would be. And it wasn't until I was in chemo that I actually felt like I was sick. I didn't recognize that there was something wrong with me until I was in chemo. And I don't know, looking back, if I had to choose as an adult to do it, I would like to say that I would say, yeah, I'll do chemo. But it was so difficult and traumatic. I don't know that looking back, I would choose it.
That is a really, really hard pill to swallow, honestly, because the parent, on this side of things, we know that, especially when we're talking about, doctors saying you may do this or you may do that. When they give you that diagnosis, they ultimately give us a percentage. They give us a chance. This is how much of a chance they have to survive. And even for us, I think it was 15%. And we ran with 15% because we knew there was a 100% chance of what was going to happen if we did nothing. To hear you say that, and really kind of puts it into perspective that, looking back on it, what that chemo did and how it affected you in such a harsh way that you may even seriously consider maybe not having done it if you had the opportunity to go back and do it again, knowing what the outcome may be. And we don't know what the outcome would have been, right? It could have been drastically different. But when you're going through it, you're thinking, and really we don't have any other options, right? That the chemo, radiation, these surgery, obviously, these are your options when it comes to this. Or the fourth option, which is do nothing and just hope for the best. And when you can look back on it as at your younger self and say, think twice, then that is a really hard pill to swallow.
In a lot of people's cases, chemo does help a lot. In my case, it did nothing but make me sick. But I think if I were going into it knowing nothing, I would definitely choose it. It's just the fact that I know so much about it now. It makes it such a scarier.
It's the more I honestly wish that I didn't know so much about this entire topic or community now that I do. It's so many more things I wish I could fill my head with and educate myself on, but it really is a lot, and it's very deep. A rabbit hole, if anybody wants to go down it, that it leads to a lot of dark places, but it also gives us a perspective on how we need to move forward and change the view, right? The view on the way pediatric cancer is handled, the way the kids are treated. 99 times out of 100, the doctors, the nurses, child life specialists, wonderful people, and they make it almost bearable to be going through the hardest time in your life. But the world in general is not giving the respect to the kids that are going through this. And it's, not everybody has the opportunity to move on and do all the things they want to do, but we need to make sure that more of them do. You mentioned, or I was, like I said, I was reading about it and I was looking through it a little bit, and you mentioned a lot of the book, and I was looking at it. And first of all, I love the illustrations. I love the little
Thank you.
pictures that are in there. I also love that it, like with the blog and things like that from your dad, that it almost is like a conversation that's being had within the book, and it makes it easy to follow along. Because I also said that I haven't read a full book from cover to cover in probably 20 years. Because if it doesn't interest me, I will not do it. I will get through 2 or 3 pages and the book will sit on a shelf. And you are now the second author that I've had on the show, and it was the same. When I started reading her book, I couldn't stop reading it because it was interesting to me, mainly because obviously I understand the topic, but because it's taught, or it's written in a way that makes you continue to want to read more, and it's engaging. Well, tell me about how, you said your father kind of blogged about your journey from, the beginning and through it, and kind of what was his reasoning or goal for doing that?
My dad also is a writer. He processes his emotions through writing. I do the same. So that was his way of processing, dealing with his emotions. It was like journaling, but also to tell all of our friends and family what's going on. Because, people would individually reach out to us and ask, what does the test say? And it was just hard for my parents to respond to everyone. So my dad started blogging, to do updates. And then sometimes it would turn more into like a journal entry and sometimes a poem, stuff like that, that it really inspired me to see how open and transparent he was.
Do you know I mean, obviously, yes, but did you know to the extent throughout your journey, even the very beginning, that he was doing the blogging like he was?
I knew some of the time. I didn't know how often, but I did know that he wrote about me, and especially during the time where one of his readers who was reading it for the technological reasons, because my dad also did a technology blog. And so he had some readers who were reading for that, and then others who were reading for my updates. And so one of the doctors that was reading it for the technology aspect, he happened to be a neurosurgeon and knew exactly what needed to happen and pulled some strings to transfer me to the hospital he worked at. So it wound up being a huge blessing that there were people reading it who knew what to do.
That is I mean, that is, somebody is guiding that along from above. That is
Yes.
truly incredible because, oh, for obviously, I'm not by any means at that level. My wife is a writer. For me, it was, I do a lot of social media things. So, I mean, I guess in a sense, you could say that I'm a blogger, but that's the way that I just updated people was Facebook posts. That was,
Mhm.
was just easy all at one time versus sending text messages and and all that kind of stuff. But but you have to understand that too. You never know who's reading it. You never know who's going to see it and what kind of impact that can have, obviously in a positive way to get you where you needed to be.
Mhm.
It can positively impact somebody's life about they're going through at the same time. I had somebody reach out to me the other day and said that they've been watching videos that I've done on TikTok, detailing our daughter's journey, and it made a huge impact on them. And to me, I don't think of myself as some kind of social figure or anything like that or public figure. I think that I'm just trying to detail what we went through, and maybe that can help somebody in a positive way. And I think that's what this book and is doing as well. And I think it gives such a good insight to what's can be happening on a kind of the day-to-day basis, like you're almost living it, gives you that insight so that maybe other people want to get involved or they want to share the story and spread it out there. Because the more that people see books like this and the more that people see a blog like that, more awareness we're going to have for this community as well. And it's so, I don't know, I have so many words that I could say, but it's just amazing what you can do
Thank you.
with just your words. And I'm so glad that you did this.
I was watching your TikToks before I reached out to you, and it had an impact on me too. Just hearing other children's stories really impacts me as well.
And I appreciate that. It's been one of those things where that was my daughter's TikTok account, and she would that was her thing, that was her outlet. She would do TikToks with her sisters and things, and when she passed, I took it over and just kind of started using it as a way to really kind of share. But also, that was my therapy. That was my therapy to kind of with other people. And if I have one person reach out and say, "Hey, you made a difference. You impacted me in this way," or your daughter impacted, and I say, then that's exactly why we're doing all this. That's exactly why I get up every day and this is how I decide to turn my grief into something positive. So I appreciate that. And I love, and maybe one day this is me, right? Maybe one day this is me writing it down. But for now, it's just spoken word on my side. You also mentioned that you do short films and you weren't sure if you would turn this into like video versus the book. Is there ever
Mhm.
that's something that you're planning on doing or you think you want to do?
It is. I'm still trying to figure out what it would look like. I I do a lot of documentary films, and some people have suggested that I turn it into a documentary because I have a lot of pictures, way too many pictures. But I've thought about turning it into a documentary. I've thought about um, writing a feature length that's inspired by my story. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to write short stories inspired by different events in my book. And I'm thinking about turning those into short films and then eventually turn mine into a feature length.
I love that. And I will definitely be following close to see when that happens because
Thank you.
that's incredible. And to be honest with you, and everybody has a different feeling about this, but there is childhood cancer commercial, right? There is one that
Mhm.
runs all the time. It doesn't show the reality of what this disease does, what the diagnosis does, what a day-to-day life is. And if you can turn this book, but your experiences into something that people can see, on TV and film and things like that, I think it really make an impact that is far beyond what anything that's been done so far, because that's that you get them, right? You get them to watch what you're doing and draw them in, and then they can see the realities of it. It doesn't have to be, gory like a horror film, right? I mean, yes,
Right.
there are some images that I have of what my daughter's what went through that are not safe for work that I can't put on social media because it'll take them down. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I've also said those are the images that people need to see to realize, what this is. And